Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. We're going to begin our program in just a moment. My name is Jim Ogle from WIBW-TV in Topeka, and I'm honored to be the chair of the Kansas Association of Broadcasters this year. We welcome you to this luncheon and this debate. We'd like to thank both of our candidates for agreeing to be here. We've had a number of years that we've used this very luncheon over the years as a forum for discussion of issues important to Kansans. And we hope that all of you will enjoy today's discourse. Our moderator this afternoon is my colleague Eugene Williams, General Manager of KTWU in Topeka. I'll turn the podium over to him to explain the format and introduce our candidates. Please welcome Eugene to the podium.
Thank you very much, Jim. Get everything situated here. Let me give you the debate instructions as we have developed them. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then I will ask questions, giving each candidate 90 seconds to respond and a 30-second rebuttal from the candidate who answered first. We'll have someone down here keeping time for the candidates. All questions have been developed by me. The order of who answers first will change with each question. At the end, the candidates will have 2 minutes in their closing statements in the same order as the opening statements. We ask the audience to please refrain from any applause or reaction actually during the debate. And of course, if you would, at this time, please check your cell phones and stuff to make sure those are in some type of position where we won't disturb the candidates also. When I bring the candidates up, of course, you'll be able to clap and applaud for them being here. So with that, let me bring up both of the candidates, Representative Paul Davis, and then, of course, Governor Sam Brownback. There should be some water under each podium. Absent any fans, I've had that question asked a lot. No fans under the podiums. Okay. I want to say good afternoon to the gentlemen and thank them for participating in this Kansas Association of Broadcasters debate. We earlier flipped the coin, and if I'm correct, Kent, wasn't that coin a piece of memorabilia from the Kansas City Royals? Ah, the Chiefs, okay, all right. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. We flipped the coin to decide who would be the person to give their opening statements. And of course, that at this point is Governor Brownback. He won the coin toss. So we will start with an opening statement from Governor Brownback, and then we'll move accordingly. Governor Brownback.
Thank you very much, Eugene. Appreciate that. Thank you for hosting this, Kansas Association of Broadcasters. I've got to start off by saying, go Royals. This is exciting, what's taking place. The Royals are America's team now. Everybody in America is cheering for them outside of Nancy Pelosi's district. That's the only one that's cheering for them. So we're excited about that and hopeful that they can sweep in the series. Thank you for hosting this. You have a big choice to make this fall. The direction for the state of Kansas in the future. And it's an important choice, and you have dramatic differences between myself and Paul Davis. I put forward a plan that's a conservative model. It's lower taxes. It's work requirements for welfare. It's getting our fiscal house in order. It's getting growth to take place. It's investing in our core functions like schools and roads. And we have done that, and we've moved that agenda on forward. And now we're seeing things grow in the state of Kansas and record employment, 4.8% unemployment rates, and just yesterday, poverty index is going down in the state of Kansas according to the U.S. Census Bureau. We are moving in the right direction and getting things done. And that's important for us as a state where we have languished for 35 years. Now, change is difficult, and this has been difficult. And we're moving now in the right direction, but Paul Davis represents an Obama model that seeks to have higher taxes, no work requirements, and to have more government intrusion into your lives. And that's your choice. One of the things that hasn't been talked about much in this race is the selection of judges. because the governor selects judges in the state of Kansas. And that matters, and it matters a great deal. We're seeing now even a case, the Carr brothers here in Wichita, going to the Kansas Supreme Court and was overturned by the Kansas Supreme Court. The Kansas Supreme Court, a very liberal court. Paul Davis wants to continue to appoint liberal judges to that court. I want to appoint judges who will interpret the law, not rewrite it as they choose to see it to be. This is an important distinction between the two of us on who would appoint and how they would appoint judges. And I hope this is something we can discuss here because it's a key issue and it's a key distinction between the two of us. One of the Supreme Court justices even hosted a fundraiser for Paul Davis in her home. I find that wrong and something that shouldn't happen.
Representative Davis.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Paul Davis. I'm a lifelong Kansan, a moderate, a 15-year member of my local Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the son of 2 teachers and the parent of a soon-to-be kindergartner. The issue of public education is personal to me. That's why I've been a steadfast champion for our public schools during my 12 years in the legislature. That's why I opposed Governor Brownback's largest cut to public school funding in state history. And that's why I will make restoring those cuts my very top priority as governor. It's one of the reasons why I have the support of over 180 current and former Republican elected officials, 3 speakers of the House, 3 Senate presidents, 3 lieutenant governors, a U.S. senator, and 2 Kansas Republican Party chairs. That's never happened in Kansas before, but it's happening because I have a track record of being able to unite Democrats and Republicans. It's also happening because the governor's economic experiment just isn't working, and it's not going to work. Not only are we trailing our surrounding states and the rest of the country in economic growth, it has plunged our state deep into debt, and it's harming thousands of Kansans. Kansans like Mary from Winfield, who is here with us today. Mary is a single mom and also happens to be a Republican. She provides for her son on a shoestring budget and is proud that she has not had to turn to public assistance for help. But because Mary falls within the bottom 20% of Kansas wage earners, she is paying 50% more in Kansas income taxes solely because of the governor's economic experiment. We have to do better for people like Mary. The choice that we have in this election is about whether we're going to clean up the mess that the governor has created or whether we're going to hit the accelerator, as the governor says, on more cuts to schools, more debt, and a failed experiment. Kansas just can't afford this. We have to go in a different direction, a direction that prioritizes our schools and uses proven ways to grow our economy, and that is exactly what I will do as governor.
First question, Representative Davis, you will be given the opportunity to answer this first. From the economy to education to Ebola, there's an air of uncertainty about the future. What will your administration do to calm the concerns of Kansans?
Well, first of all, what we're going to do is, using the old adage, when you're in a hole, you need to stop digging. The governor's economic experiment, one-size-fits-all experiment, just isn't working. All you have to do is look at the data out there. We are trailing our surrounding states and the rest of the country in economic growth. The governor's own Council of Economic Advisors documented this seven months ago. We are 45th in the country in terms of new business creation. In 2013, there were more businesses that closed shop than opened shop. We've had 3 credit downgradings in just over a year. This isn't working, and it's not going to work. But the governor says that he wants to hit the accelerator on what we've been doing, and we know what that means. It means more cuts to schools. It means more dollars taken out of our proven job-creating program, our transportation plan. I believe we need to end the experiment. Let's freeze the tax cuts where they're at on January 1, 2015. Let's get our fiscal house in order, and let's restore the cuts that have been made to our public schools, because strong public schools are the very foundation of a stronger economy. Business leaders like John Moore all across the state have told me that the best thing that we can do to move our economy forward is to have the very best public schools, and that's why I will make restoring cuts my very top priority as governor.
Governor Brownback.
Well, I wish he hadn't voted for the cuts in the first place then. The cuts he's talking about are the ones that happened in the Parkinson administration, that the administration cut state support for K-12 education and then put one-time Obama stimulus money in that place that went away the next year. Those are the cuts he voted for, and then I've put money in every year. I have increased state funding for education every year I've been in office. And then listen as well to the rest of the plan he's putting forward. The plan is for him to raise income taxes on you, on the person at his table. His first plan is to raise taxes on people that make $15,000 a year, raise their income taxes. That's what he's proposing, because we've cut income taxes on everybody in the state of Kansas. And his first step is to say, if you're making $15,000 a year, your income taxes are going to go up. That's not any way to grow. Now, he can be critical of my plan all he wants to be. We've still got record employment in the state of Kansas, and his plan is to raise your income taxes. And I just ask you, is that the way you grow an economy? By raising your income taxes? It's not. We started off with one of the highest income tax rates in this region, 6.45%. It's at 4.8% now. We took the tax off of small business to create growth, and it has. Record number of new businesses filing in the state of Kansas and small businesses expanding. Record employment, 4.8% unemployment, one of the lowest in America. Those are data points you can rely on, and that is what is happening in Kansas, and raising taxes isn't the way to grow.
Rebuttal, Representative Davis.
Governor, you're trying desperately to rewrite your record, and you're trying to rewrite mine as well. But you know it's just not the truth. I have been a champion for our public schools. The Republican president of the Goddard School Board is here today supporting me because she and so many other leaders in education know who the real pro-education candidate in this race is. And it's ironic that you talk about raising taxes on the poor. That's exactly what you've done. Your first tax plan that you introduced would have raised taxes by 5,000% on people who make $25,000 or less. I think that is morally wrong.
Let's stay on the issue of taxes. This question is for you, Governor Brownback. Every taxpayer likes to hear the term reduction in taxes, but no taxpayer likes to live with a reduction in services. So how will your administration resolve this type of dissonance?
Growth, and that's what we are doing. Look at the data yourself. Growth, 4.8%. And we're having difficulty in general aviation in Wichita at this point in time. No thanks to President Obama, who Paul Davis is a two-time delegate. We're having difficulty here with the president belittling general aviation and saying, well, those fat cats in business aviation, that hurts us. We need to grow. And you grow by getting your taxes off of small business in particular, which we did. We took the taxes off of small business pass-through income, and you're seeing record numbers file in the state of Kansas, and then you're getting people like Patty Bossert in Topeka, who had a temp agency in Topeka, use that extra funds to expand into Manhattan, Kansas. And we're seeing that. I get examples all the time. I had a lady stop me after church 2 days ago and was saying, with that message that you sent, we started a small business, and we're working now. And 3/4 of Kansans work for themselves or for somebody with 10 or fewer employees. And when you recruit big business into the state of Kansas, you can get them, but you've got to buy them. You pay for big business coming into the state of Kansas, and they can change their business model and go somewhere else. Small business is the right route to go, and that's what we're doing, and we're getting growth to take place. And we ended this fiscal year with $434 million cash on hand. We ended with that much money, and we're increasing our investment in schools at the same time, record levels.
Representative Davis.
All you have to do is take a look at the budget picture. $1.3 billion of debt over the next 5 years. That comes from our nonpartisan legislative research department. You ask the governor what his plan is, he doesn't have a plan. What's going to happen are going to be more cuts to schools and more dollars taken out of our transportation plan, a proven job creator. The governor's taken $1 billion out of the transportation plan so far, and all he's going to do is take more. Just look at the performance of our economy. 45th in the country in new business creation. more businesses closing in 2013 than opening. This year, the rest of the country is double the job growth that we have in Kansas. This experiment is not working, and it just isn't going to work. And it's high time that we understand that and we move forward. Think about how we are going to be able to restore the cuts to public education when we are in $1.3 billion of debt. It won't happen. We have to end the experiment now, and we have to restore those cuts to our public schools, or we will not be able to grow as a state.
Rebuttal, Governor?
Paul Davis is lying. We've invested record amounts of money in schools. Go check with the Kansas Department of Education. We have fixed a pension system that was in bankruptcy zone, that he helped get in the bankruptcy zone in the legislature, and now it's out of the bankruptcy zone. And his method of getting us to grow is raising taxes. We've also done every T-Works project that's been announced and has been said that we would do, including the one recently here in Wichita that I announced that is a nice big project for this area to fix congestion we have in this city. We are moving forward, and what he's saying is data that what he did during the legislature, not what I've done.
Next question. Representative Davis, you'll get a chance to answer this one first. To be the greatest state in the union, what resources should we protect? What resources should we promote? And what resources should we dispense with?
I want to respond first to the comments that the governor just made. So disappointing, Governor. The Kansas City Star recently wrote an editorial called "The Relentless Lies of Sam Brownback." The things that you've been saying in this campaign have been disproven over and over and over again, but you just keep on going. You know, I was part of the bipartisan coalition that put that bill together to fix capers, and all you did was frankly sign it. And fortunately, the legislature has not wanted to go down the road that you want to go down, which is going to make the unfunded liability in capers even worse than it was before. What we need to do as a state is get back to the basics. We need great public schools. I'm the son of 2 teachers. This issue is personal to me. All across the state, all I hear from parents, from teachers, from principals, from school board members is the concern that they have never seen before for the state of our public schools, because we have a governor who has never made public education a priority. When he was in the U.S. Senate, he voted against education repeatedly, voted against after-school programs, voted against funding for more teachers, voted against Head Start. As governor, he tried to get rid of early Head Start. He has cut early childhood education, he has cut K through 12 education, and he has cut higher education. There is no way that we can grow and prosper as a state if we have a governor who will never make education a priority, and that is his record.
Governor Brownback?
It's completely false. And why didn't you fix capers when you were when Governor Parkinson was governor? If you didn't need the governor to get this done, because they wouldn't step up and deal with the problem. We had the second least funded pension system in America when I came in. The only state worse than us was Illinois, and thankfully they were there. We'd have the worst funded system in the country. And that's what gets you into bankruptcy. It's the pension system with nearly a $9–10 billion hole. And they wouldn't fix it. They wouldn't deal with it. And also look at where we were in jobs. Last decade, we lost private sector jobs in Kansas. During my administration, we've added 58,000 new private sector jobs in this state. 58,000 new private sector jobs during the time that I've been governor of the state of Kansas. Those are the things that happen. Now, by the way, the question was on resources. I think we need to deal with the issue of water in the state of Kansas, the Ogallala Aquifer, the resources that we have in reservoirs in this state. I think we have to have a good, solid, big discussion about this. I've got credibility in this area. I've worked on the issue of water for years, from being agriculture secretary on through. And I think we have a serious issue here that we need to confront and deal with if we're going to have a future in this state. And it's one of the major issues over our next 50-year outlook that we have. And we've got a discussion going on, and we've had 100 meetings taking place thus far, and we're going to address the issues of water moving on forward. We've done some of it already, repealing use it or lose it on our water law. And we need to do more of that moving on forward, of addressing the critical issues of water.
Rebuttal, Representative Davis.
Well, the governor mentions bankruptcy. That's exactly where his economic plan is heading our state. $1.3 billion of debt over the next 5 years, solely caused by the governor's economic experiment. Economists all across the spectrum, on the left and the right, deemed this the worst economic plan in the country. The conservative Republican Senate tax chair stood up when this bill was being debated and said this was the worst tax bill that he had ever seen. But the governor proceeded recklessly down the road, and we are deep in debt if we don't end this experiment now.
Governor Brownback, this question will be for you first. Let's see if we can roll a whole bunch of issues into one question here. The need for certain types of labor, plus needed changes in immigration policy, times changes in voting rights, equals emotional upheaval. What can you do to change this equation?
Well, you got a lot of questions rolled together in that particular one. I think there are issues that we need to that we need to work on together. What I've tried to do in working with the legislature is when issues like those come up is say, what can we do to move something on forward? What can we do to unite together? There are a lot of difficulties, there are a lot of emotions with those sorts of issues. And we've had a lot of success on moving things forward as a state and dealing with issues like the CAPERS system, like getting some growth happening in the state of Kansas. Those are, I think, important things for us to do, like dealing with issues like water. So I think really what you have to do is just not say, okay, it's got to be this way or that, but a governor has to set a course for a state. And you have to say, okay, these are things that are important for us to deal with. When I came in, we said, we've got to get some growth happening here. We've got to deal with our budget. Our budget problem when I came in was huge. I was facing a $500 million deficit in the next 18 months. We had virtually no money in the bank account. We had lost private sector jobs. We were making half payments to schools. We were cutting our provider payments to Medicaid when I came into office. That was the fiscal situation we had at that point in time, and it was the one Paul Davis helped create. That's the one he wants to take us back to because Mark Parkinson had raised taxes just before that time period, the 1-cent sales tax. His answer, raise taxes, you'll get less growth, and you're going to be in a bigger budget problem. But it's bringing people together is how you solve these things.
Representative Davis.
You know, when Governor Brownback came into office, we were poised for success. He talks over and over again about how there was no money in the bank, uses this $876 figure, which has been disproven over and over and over again, but yet the governor keeps talking about it. It's one of those relentless lies that the Kansas City Star mentioned. There were over $230 million in the bank when Governor Brownback took office. And you know why? Because people like me voted for a 1-cent sales tax so that we could spare our public schools from another round of cuts and we could pass a comprehensive transportation plan. Now, Governor Brownback has been more than happy to show up at every ribbon cutting that he possibly can for the transportation plan. But when it was being debated in the legislature, he was adamantly opposed to it. And if he was governor, we would have never had a comprehensive transportation plan, and he's using every opportunity that he can now to attack me for it. Governor, you just can't continue to have it both ways. Immigration reform is critically important to our state, and the federal government, frankly, needs to get their act together and pass immigration reform because it's a crucial part of our economy. We have many immigrant workers in this state that are vital to the economic success of Kansas. I also stand behind the DREAM Act. I think it was the right thing to do. Governor Brownback, when he was in the Senate, was absent when it came time to vote on the DREAM Act, and it failed by 1 vote in the U.S. Senate.
Rebuttal, Governor Brownback.
Well, I guess I will agree with Paul on this, on that number, $876.05. That was what was in the bank account July 1 of 2010, the year before I came into office. But you're right, it really wasn't that. It was actually a $23 million deficit. The prior administration had actually deficit spent and moved expenses to the next year so that it didn't show a deficit because you cannot legally deficit spend in the state of Kansas. And yet they had done that because the fiscal situation was a complete wreck. And we were looking at no end in sight unless you started to really address the problems we had as a state.
Next question is going to be for you, Representative Davis. The definition of marriage continues to be an issue of public debate. How will your administration respond to the diversity of thought, the diversity of culture, and the necessary sensitivity associated with this issue?
When I was in the legislature and we debated this issue, I did not support a constitutional amendment. I did that because I thought that it would damage the welcoming image that our state has had, really dating back to when we became a state. But the people of Kansas decided that they wanted that in the Constitution, and they did so by a significant majority. And I respect that decision. The fact of the matter is that this issue is out of the hands of politicians. There's nothing that I can do, there's nothing that Governor Brownback can do to change this issue. The courts will decide it. I think a lot of people on both sides of this issue wish the U.S. Supreme Court would have addressed it so we would have some definition. But the Kansas Supreme Court and federal courts are going to have to deal with this, and we will have to go on from there.
Governor Brownback.
Well, I stand with the people of Kansas. The marriage is the union of a man and a woman. They voted that in this state by nearly 70%, put it in their Constitution, put it in the highest document they possibly could. And now you've got judges seeking to rewrite that. Comes back to the issue of judges for governors. This is something that each of us have impact on. Do you want somebody appointing liberal judges like Paul Davis? You want somebody to appoint judges that will stay with the law like what I appoint? I've had a lot of experience on working on the issue of judges. I was on the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee in selecting John Roberts, Samuel Alito. I've appointed judges here in this state, Eric Milgren here in Wichita, Julie Robinson, Carlos Mejia. I worked with administrations to appoint those. It is also something that a governor does, is defend the Constitution of Kansas. In some places, the governor or the attorney general is deciding, well, we're not going to defend the Constitution, even though that's the way the people have spoken. Attorney General Derek Schmidt stood up and said, we will defend the Kansas Constitution. I've stood behind him. Paul Davis has not announced a position. That's not leadership, and you can't duck the questions. You have to actually deal with the issues as they come up, and you can't pick them as governor. They arrive on your doorstep, and you've got to do the best you can. But you can do that. It isn't true that there's nothing you can do.
Rebuttal, Representative Davis.
Well, Governor, your first choice to the Supreme Court referred to funding for public schools as wasteful spending. I wouldn't call that a good selection of somebody who we want to have deciding critical issues. We don't need to be giving the governor more power over the judicial branch, and that's what Governor Brownback wants. But I want to go back to this welcoming image, because if we want to grow Kansas, we need to let people know that we want them here. Governor Brownback was an early endorser of a bill that would have legalized discrimination. And thankfully, the Senate president pulled that bill from the agenda because it would have been terrible for Kansas.
Next question. The phrase Kansas common sense is used a great deal in political circles. What does this phrase mean for you, Governor Brownback?
I guess it means to me what, looking at the world the way my dad would. He's an 83-year-old farmer in eastern Kansas. One of those areas that some people, leadership in the Democrat Party have put down. Parker, Kansas is my hometown, 280 people. But it's looking at the world the way he would. He would say, you know, basically, I'm a conservative, but it's got to work. And that's what I've done in governing. I'm a conservative, but it has to work. And that's what we've done in putting forward plans and proposals to create growth in the state because we weren't growing. Bob Dole is one of my co-chairs, along with Mary Eisenhower. Bob Dole was originally elected the first time at the old 6th congressional seat in Kansas. We now have 4, and we'll be headed to 3 if we don't change the trajectory. Now, we could have stayed on the same old path that Paul Davis wants to take you back to of high income taxes. And that continued to drive people out of this state because we were losing people to all our surrounding states but Nebraska. Now we're getting people from all our surrounding states but Colorado. But it takes time. Tax policy does take time, but we know from the prior experience, you have high taxes, you're going to drive people out of the region. So common sense to me is doing the things that you know you need to do to get yourself on the right track and off of the wrong track. And that's what common sense means to me.
Mr. Davis.
You know, common sense means to me working together, bringing people together to find solutions that work. That's what I've done for 12 years as a legislator. I've built bipartisan coalition after bipartisan coalition. There's a reason that those 180 current and former Republican elected officials are supporting me, because they know that I'm the kind of leader who will unite people. I've been able to work with Democrats, moderate and conservative. The governor hasn't been able to work with Democrats very well, and he hasn't been able to work with a lot of Republicans. He decided to basically declare war on an entire wing of the Republican Party during the last election. It also means that we bring together people who have good ideas, who have a lot of experience, and we're going to have the most bipartisan administration in Kansas history, because I don't believe all the good ideas are in one political party or all the good people are in one political party. When we set about to put an economic plan together, I asked John Moore, former lieutenant governor, Gary Scheer, another former lieutenant governor, a Republican, to put together a business advisory group. They went out and found seasoned business professionals, economic development professionals, community leaders to advise us how it is we grow the economy. The governor didn't do that. He hired a discredited, out-of-state economist that the state of Kansas paid $75,000 to design this economic experiment that is a total failure.
Rebuttal, Governor?
Well, Representative Davis and his complete left-wing move in his party, and make no mistake about it, he talks about being a moderate, but he has one of the top 10 most liberal voting records in the Kansas legislature, representing the community of Lawrence, and he's put forward that policy consistently, and that's fine. That's his proposal. He can do that. But that's not the way Kansas's going. He's driven people out of his party. Jan Pauls used to represent, as a Democrat, the community of Hutchinson. She switched parties being a Republican because he had driven his party so hard to the left. And a number of Republicans that support him also support raising taxes, and they support Obamacare, neither of which I support doing, but he does.
Last question before we move to the closing statements. And this is a good one, okay?
They're all good.
What one thing, and of course this will be for you, Mr. Davis, to begin with. What one thing could your opponent say? What one thing could your opponent do that might get you to vote for him in this election?
Well, it's a little too late, I'm afraid. And I think Governor Brownback will probably say the same thing. You know, I had hopes when we had a new governor coming in. And I hope that he would be able to achieve consensus in the legislature. I hope that he would be a strong supporter of education. He came to the legislature to deliver his first State of the State message, and he said in that message that public schools are to Kansas what the national defense is to the federal government. I couldn't agree with that more. It's absolutely right. Our public schools are that important. Problem is, the very next day he submitted his first state budget, and that budget contained the single largest cut to public school funding in state history. And 4 months later, he got his wish. He signed that bill into law, and he declared that it was a victory. Historic cuts to public education, a victory. Well, we've all seen the consequences of this. We've seen the larger class sizes. We've seen the parents paying more fees than ever. We've seen our test scores go down. We need a governor who is going to make education the very top priority. I have that track record. It's a personal issue to me. Our daughter will walk into a public school classroom for the first time next year. And I want her to have the very opportunities that I had growing up here in Kansas. Strong public schools are the very foundation of a strong economy, and that's why we need a champion for public schools in the governor's office.
Governor Brownback?
It's pretty late for that, but there are things I could hear that could move me some. If he'd say he didn't want to raise taxes, actually, if he'd tell me where he stood on a lot of issues, he doesn't even have an issue page on his website. He's just basically running against me, but he's not saying, okay, here's what I would do. If he'd say, I'm going to require work if you're on welfare, which he voted against, work requirements that if you're on welfare. And the way out of poverty isn't to give a pittance to people. the way out of poverty is three things. It's work, it's education, it's family structure. And he wouldn't even say that if you're able-bodied, you have to work. If he would say on judges, I'm not going to appoint liberal judges that want to rewrite the law or to have the law be as they see it rather than as it is. I want a judge to be an umpire, not a baseball player in the game. If he would say and stop lying about education. We are at over $13,000 per student. We just had a ranking of our public education system that had us ranked as the 5th best public education system in America, Kansas Public Schools. We've invested heavily. He voted against the last one, $130 million additional dollars in property tax relief and education funding. And of course, Paul Davis votes against it, but he talks the other way. And the cuts they made during the big height of the recession, I respect that, but don't blame me for the cuts you did of the state in education.
Rebuttal, Representative Davis.
Well, Governor, that just doesn't change the fact that you signed into law the single largest cut to public school funding in state history. And I'm glad you brought up poverty. One of your goals when you first ran was to try to do something about poverty. And you certainly have done something about poverty. You've made it worse. We have more people living in poverty in this state than ever before. 1 in 4 children are living in poverty. And you look at the policies that your administration has adopted, and no wonder why people like Mary are wondering what happened to their governor. They need a governor who is going to stand up for them and do something about poverty, and that's what I will do.
2-minute closing statements. We will begin with Governor Brownback.
I just want to quote this from WIBW website. They said, new Census Bureau report shows the Kansas poverty rates coming down. Official measurement released last week indicates poverty rate in 2011 and 12 dropped 2.3%. Poverty rate in Kansas stands at 11.8% compared to nationwide average of 15.9%. That's what the facts are, and I would hope you would look at the facts in this election and decide whether or not you want to go hard left, Obama left, with Paul Davis, or you want to continue a course of growth, investment in your core functions, improving the CAPER system, improving the system of the state of Kansas that I've put forward. And I want to return one more time to the issue of judges because it's so central and it hasn't been discussed much in this campaign. It's one of the key things that a governor does is appoint judges. And it's also a key function for as far as which way we're going to go as a state. Now, one of the Supreme Court judges in Kansas hosted a fundraiser for Paul Davis. I can't believe they did that, but they did. This is a liberal court that's overturned cases like the Carr brothers here in Wichita, heinous crimes. Overturned those cases. That'll probably be appealed. It will be appealed to the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court has overturned the Kansas Supreme Court in a unanimous opinion by the U.S. Supreme Court. It matters what judges you appoint and whether they stick with the law and the Constitution or they rewrite it. This is important. It hasn't been discussed much in this campaign, but it's critical on how you move forward as a state. I will appoint judges that stay within the bounds of the law and the Constitution. And we feel this constantly in this society today. And I ask for your vote in November on that direction and not on an Obama direction for the state of Kansas.
Closing statement, Representative Davis.
Thank you for being here today. When I decided to get into this race, I knew that Governor Brownback would run an ugly campaign with personal attacks. When I didn't think the ads could get any sleazier, I turned on my television this morning and I saw an ad that he is now running linking me to the Carr brothers' murder. I knew one of the victims of the Carr brothers' murder. And Governor, you trying to exploit that terrible tragedy to help get elected is disgraceful, and you ought to be ashamed of it. I've taken a lot of hits in this campaign, but you know what? They're worth it, because the future of Kansas is on the line, and I don't want to see 4 more years of what we've had. 4 more years of a stagnant economy, 4 more years of raiding our transportation fund, 4 more years of cuts to education, early childhood, K through 12, higher education. As I mentioned, next year our daughter Caroline will walk into a public school classroom for the very first time, hopefully in Topeka. My wife and I are like any other parents. We want the very best for her. But she and her friends will not be able to achieve those great opportunities if we continue to have a governor who has never made education a priority. A governor who has turned our state into a science lab trying to gain national acclaim. His experiment has put our state deep into debt. It's damaged our economy, and it has jeopardized the quality of education for an entire generation of Kansas kids. We don't need a red state model. We don't need a blue state model. We need common sense solutions that work for Kansas. Jill Docking and I will restore the cuts to our public schools, and we will get our economy moving again. We will use proven ways to grow our economy. No more experiments. The future of our state depends upon it. And I ask for your vote on November 4th so that we can restore Kansas together, because we must. Thank you for being here today.
Everyone, let's give a great round of applause. Our candidates for the office of governor in the great state of Kansas. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Gene.
Gene, nice job. Good questions.
Thank you for asking the questions and hosting us.
Do appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Governor, thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. All done? Okay. Thank you all for coming. The sales session will start promptly at 1:30. We'd also appreciate it if you would fill out an evaluation and leaving it at the registration table. Remember, we'll draw one name that fills out a registration, and they'll win $100 in cash. Thank you all very much.